Alright, it's like 4:38 a.m. Where are we going?
Joshua Tree, of course.
Talon's walking.
Talon's walking.
Walking? I still had it in my car. I forgot to leave it there.
Oh,
I was like,
yeah.
oh,
Nice.
Try. I could be the next.
I probably describe it as what we all wish the desert was like 100% of the time. I think a lot of people like the idea of Joshua Tree and that desert region, but I don't think they realize that the desert is more than just 100% rock. There's a lot of sand. I think it's California's version of the desert.
What are some of your favorite activities to do within the national park?
I like climbing there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Climbing definitely is one of my favorite things to do, and Joshua Tree usually has some very gracious handholds and spots to climb for beginners and for people who have climbed their whole lives. I think there's a lot of uniqueness there that you can't really find in Yosemite or any other pretty popular climbing spots. My first climbing trip was up there as a little kid, so I have a lot of memories of my first walls being there.
How do you remember your first time going to the park?
I remember it being very vast
Mm-hmm.
and kind of reminded me of Mars in a way. It was my first time going out there as a kid. I didn't know what to expect or what really I was going to be seeing, and I believe I was 6 or 7 the first time I was there. And I went there with some of my dad's friends, and we went climbing all day, and then got to rappel down about an 90 foot wall towards the evening, and looking out over everything. I was like, this is crazy. I was like, I feel like I'm in a whole another world, and I probably wasn't even more than like an hour and a half away from my house. Someone please remember me. You don't remember
Maybe.
Bones? No one remembers Bones when he's out there, so whatever.
So I know you've told me, but how did we decide on Joshua Tree as the location for your wedding last year?
Well, you're a big fan of the desert. So she's like, we had a bunch of places on the list. It was Big Sur was on the list. We looked at beach locations. We looked at homes in Hollywood, and ultimately decided that the desert was a really good fit once we got out there.
What was your favorite part about being married out there? In this kind of like really secluded place, you know?
For me, it was the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So we did look at Big Sur, we did look at Sequoia, we looked at a few different places, and they're all beautiful, but the desert has a really stark landscape to it, and I think that seemed like it would be a really beautiful background. When we were scouting out there, we liked a couple locations, but one place in particular, RIMROCK Ranch, the place where they kind of typically set up for the wedding, just seeing the really vast open expanse behind us and the Joshua trees out there, that's what sealed the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right, as soon as we walked on property. I mean, having looked at 12 or 13 different places over the course of 2 weekends, it just immediately felt right as soon as we walked on. So,
When you think about the park on the whole, like if you were to describe it to someone, what are your kind of favorite parts or favorite areas to see within the national park?
In the national park, it's really different. It's unlike any typical national park. I think when you think about going camping or you think about going into a national park, it always seems more like a ton of trees or some really like large mountain range, and Joshua Tree itself is so kind of alien looking, you know, the big rocks and then these really bizarre looking trees. I think just those two really stark differences, it feels like nowhere else. And so that for me is the big draw of that park.
Yes. You ready? Yeah. Let's go. Hello.
Just mic test.
Mm-hmm.
Striking one. Camera. AD. Coming no slate. Action. Directly on camera.
The camera. So, describe to me the first time you went to Joshua Tree National Park.
So the first time I went was earlier this year in May. I went with my two friends, Natalie and Blue, and it was my first time ever going. So we planned on leaving at 7 o'clock at night to stargaze, and I think we were meant to get there at around like 10:30, 11 or so. So we packed everything in the car. We had a fun time just driving there, listening to music, chatting. And when we got there, it was super, super dark, just pitch black on the road up. And I just remember seeing so many animals like passing us by, a lot of mice. And we pulled into this tiny little parking lot on the far side of the park. And again, like no one else was there. We saw a couple cars pass on this one lane road going up. And it was just kind of weird how empty it was at night. But at the same time, it was also super, super clear. I can just remember seeing all these giant rock structures and it, like all these funky looking cactuses that I really, really wanted to touch. My favorite thing about the park is honestly, the beauty of it, of course. I think it's such a special place and so unique looking, and I'm so thankful that it's probably like 3 hours away from my house or so. So it's relatively close, but honestly, I think the magic about Joshua Tree is that it has so many different meanings to other people, including myself. I love it because I just took an excursion, like impulsive midnight trip there one night, but to other people it can mean so many other things. I think that didn't make any sense. That tends to happen when you have a place like that and you have a destination that people can connect through.
Alright. It's 7 a.m.
7 a.m. on Sunday morning. What's today, the 18th?
The 20th.
20th.
We made it. We are now entering Joshua Tree.
Stopping at
Alright, so for reference on how tall a Joshua Tree can get, I'm 5'9", standing next to my dad. He's 6'7", and this tree is way taller than that. So, Dad, tell me what we're looking at behind you right now.
So this is Quail Springs. This is a day use area, and it's one of the first stops coming into Joshua Tree from I don't know what this is, the Western Gate or whatever it's called, the first entry from the visitor center. What kind of strikes me about this place is it brings back memories. Is the first time I ever came to Joshua Tree to climb with some early college friends. My old friend Dave Weiss introduced me to climbing, and this was the first stop in my first big adventure in Joshua Tree with Dave and another climbing partner, Bob Cable. Wherever you end up, oh look at this, a little like a flycatcher bird or something down there.
So, if you were to describe the park and what we've seen here so far today to someone who had never seen the park before, how would you describe it?
Wow. I would describe it as this amazingly unique, I want to say desolate, but that seems like a negative word. I guess somewhat desolate, but that's part of its beauty also. Because in all of that desolation that you find out here, the dryness, the Joshua trees and the rocks, so much solitude. It's incredible. It's one of those places where you can come out and you can walk probably 10 minutes away from wherever you are standing near a road or near other people, and you can be alone very quickly, which I guess is part of the beauty and maybe a little bit of the danger out here. Something I notice about the landscape that I'd forgotten about is how easily the landscape sort of blends into itself, and it's like you if you're not familiar and you don't have a good sense of direction, you could quickly get lost in this environment out here. And I guess that's part of its beauty as well, a sort of sense of danger, and along with that adventure brings back a lot of good memories.
So within the park, what are some of your favorite activities to do out here?
In Joshua Tree, I think my favorite activity when I was younger, when I was before I graduated from college, was climbing. We'd come out here and we would do day trips with a couple of my friends, my climbing buddies, the two guys that introduced me to climbing, and then occasionally we would go camping. And then I have some good memories of camp trips that we did out here with some friends from high school as well. Again, it's just a great place to get away. Being younger, it was important that we had that opportunity in particular to get out and sort of just enjoy ourselves and let our hair down. And camping out here can be so fun because you feel like you're so remote and so far from everything, including authority.
How would you describe like the central culture of the park? You know how each national park kind of has its own theme. What's the theme of Joshua Tree?
I would say the theme of Joshua Tree in itself is really the landscape of the Joshua trees and the rocks. The Joshua trees are so unique to this landscape, and are really sort of the namesake of the park itself. There are climbers from all over the world that come here for a couple of reasons. One is just the incredibly stable climate and the diversity of climbs, and then the number of climbs that you can do while you're out here, because none of them, I think, are more than maybe 150, 200 feet high. But from a technical standpoint, the diversity of types of climbs is really pretty unique. To have this much diversity and this volume of climbs within such a small, sort of concentrated area, even though the park itself is very, very large, it just offers climbers an opportunity to really enjoy and practice their craft out here in such a spectacular climate and spectacular environment.
Why should people, climbers and hikers and just visitors alike, why should people want to come to Joshua Tree and care about Joshua Tree so much?
I think they'd want to come to Joshua Tree just because, as I mentioned earlier, the landscape and the area is just so unique, and I believe that it's a pretty special area, and that it's hard to find anything else like this on the face of the earth. They should care about it. The landscape, as rugged as it looks, can be damaged so easily and so quickly. And all you need to do is really look around some of the more heavily touristed populated areas, and you'll see that. Like when you and I were climbing up here right now, you look outward and it looks so pristine, but around the base of these rocks you find trash. So you find evidence of humans, you find evidence of plastic water bottles, trash left behind, sometimes recklessly, sometimes on accident. But it just reminds you of the importance of really doing your part to take care of such a spectacular and fragile landscape that exists out here.